Hey guys, Alex here from the DMs Club on the Titan Bear Gaming YouTube channel. Welcome to the next episode of my Dungeon Mastery series. In my previous episode, Dungeon Mastery 101, Spirit of Dungeon Mastery, I talk about what it means to be the Dungeon Master at your gaming table and how that makes you different from the other players at your table. I talk about the different roles that you play, I talk about why that's significant, I talk about the attitude that you should embody as you are embarking on your journey to become a Dungeon Master yourself. I also talk about how on the internet and in the YouTube space in general, there's a lot of other resources that already exist to help you get better at being a Dungeon Master, but that very few of them actually tell you where to start. Or once you've made the decision to become a Dungeon Master, what's the very first step that you need to take, or the next step, or the step after that? That's what I'm aiming to do with these next couple of videos, is talk about from the day that you make the choice that you want to be a Dungeon Master to actually running your first game, what is the finite list of things that you need to do to make that happen? So with that, I welcome you to Dungeon Mastery 102. Start at the beginning. It's a reasonable place to start, right? Now, different Dungeon Masters have different ways that they go about starting up a new RPG table, but since you're new, I figured that I would show you mine. This right here is the usual timeline that I follow when I'm booting up a new RPG table, and it loosely breaks down into the following sections. The first section of the timeline deals with your initial interactions with your new group of players, inviting them to the table, setting up that table, what your hosting details are going to be, as well as running your first session, what most veterans refer to as Session 0, as well as talking your players through their character creation step. The next phase of the timeline is Dungeon Master preparation. This is solo prep time, you getting ready to run your first game. What all does that entail? We're going to talk about it. And the last phase of the timeline is game day. It's session 1, running your first game. We'll talk about what that means and what kinds of things you need to be ready to do in order to actually execute on day 1. For this video, we're going to be focusing on the first phase, which is the initial player interactions, talking about inviting players to your table as well as running your session 0 and helping your players make their characters. So let's go ahead and get into it. For the first step, table invitations. If you've reached this point, you probably got a group of friends that you're interested in playing with, so go ahead and send them an invite. Let them know that you're starting up a game table. You got to let them know which game you're going to run, whether it's Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder or Fate or any of these other wonderful games, and let them know if there's a version that's associated with it or an edition that's associated with it. I'm going to be assuming for this video and for the rest of the videos in this series that we're talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now in your invitation, you're going to want to talk about when you want to play, what time of day, what time of week, how often you want to meet up, etc. And as the table host, the burden falls on you to help resolve people's different schedules. Now you can play weekly, you can play every couple of weeks, you can play once a month, or you can play sporadically whenever you can at will manage to get a schedule together to actually play with everybody. Now from a play length perspective, you're basically looking at a minimum of 2 hours or 3 hours per gaming session. Anything less than that and you're going to have a hard time getting things done from a story point of view, and your players are just not going to have the necessary practice that they need to start to develop a mastery of playing their characters. You can play longer than that. There's a lot of people that like to do a 5-hour session or a 7-hour session, and if you can do that, if your friends have that kind of attention span or a schedule availability, then that's great. Go ahead and do it for a long span. But you're basically looking at a 3-hour minimum gaming session. I usually play every other week for about 3 hours. That's about what my group of friends can usually handle, and it's about what our schedules will allow us to do. If you're going to be playing anything with a periodicity longer than 2 weeks, if you're going every 3 weeks or every month, or if you're only doing it sporadically, it's probably a good idea to try to budget more time than just 3 hours, because the first hour or so of your game session is going to be spent remembering what you did last time or remembering how to play. There's going to be a factor that you have to contend with if you're doing anything longer than every week or every 2 weeks. Now remember, as you're going through your scheduling activity, you are the table host. It's up to you to figure out what times people are all able to play and how often you would like to play. My particular group of friends has a tendency to work long hours during the work week, and so we can only play on weekends, and usually on a Saturday or a Sunday. Even Friday nights are a little bit too tired for folks to come over and start playing a role-playing game. But there's a lot of people out there that prefer playing on weekdays. People like it as more of a release from their work week, a little bit of a reprieve in the middle of the week. Whatever works for you and your friends is best. Go with that. Now, as the table host, you also have to pay attention to things like real-life requirements. People need to go to the bathroom. People need to watch out for their kids. People might be hungry. People people might get thirsty, these kinds of things. You should work out in your original table invitation what kind of snack system you guys want to do, whether you want people to bring their own snacks and be responsible for their own thing, or if you want to plan it around a mealtime and have it so that every week someone brings pizza or someone brings burgers or something like that. Arrange that with your group ahead of time so that it's all resolved and you guys can handle your cost sharing and all of that goodness before you get started. And the last thing that I suggest in your initial invitation to your players is to ask them to start thinking about what kinds of characters they might want to play. Now, if you've got new players who've never played role-playing games before, go ahead and send them over to the video that I made about making D&D characters. There, I try to break down the process into the highest level decisions. Every character in Dungeons & Dragons comes down to one of three types. You're either a strength-based character, a dexterity-based character, or a magic-based character. And in that video, I try to break those down and help present the different choices that you've got to make in an easy-to-understand fashion. So feel free to link them to that. But getting your players to start thinking about the kinds of characters that they want to play is a good thing to do before they actually show up at your table. Now, if you've got players that have some level of experience playing role-playing games, they might ask you what kind of setting you're going to be playing in. And for you to start with, I recommend playing in the default Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign setting. Now, this isn't particularly well documented. If you go through the rulebook and you read the Dungeon Master's Guide and you read the Monster Manual, you'll start to get a sense of what exactly this campaign setting comprises of. But let me give you a primer here. For the most part, the typical fantasy world is played in a medieval period of our real world's history. You're talking about swords and bow and arrows. You're talking about the pinnacle of weapons technology being crossbows. You can, if you want to get into more of a steampunky style or doing more of like a black powder guns and gunsmithing, that's a great thing to get into if you want, but it's not generally presumed as a part of the base default campaign setting. It's also presumed that you're going to be doing something like a medieval or feudal social system where you've got commoners and you've got lords and you've got kings, that kind of thing. That's kind of the presumed or dominant social working that's going on in the world. You'll also find other things like in the less civilized regions, maybe you'll have tribes of people, or in more civilized regions, you might have empires or more of a democratic system. All of these things are all perfectly good to include in a game and can be assumed as a part of the normal campaign environment, the default D&D setting. Basically, from a human government perspective, you can think of anything that has been done in our world over the course of human history is something that could be found in a typical D&D setting. Now, overlaid on top of all this is magic. Magic does exist in the Dungeons & Dragons default assumed setting. And while it is a lower magic setting than some of the prior versions of Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition is a lower magic setting than some of the prior versions, and maybe some other games that exist out there, there's more magic in Dungeons & Dragons than what you might find in Lord of the Rings or in the first couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. Both of these have a pretty notoriously low magic setting. Yeah, some weird stuff happens, and you kind of learn more about the different kinds of magic that exist in those worlds as those stories go on. But Gandalf is the only person in Lord of the Rings casting any kind of magic spells. And in the first couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, I think Bran is the only one that does anything remotely magical to begin with. And it takes a while for that to get booted up. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the characters themselves are going to be casting spells. They're going to be wizards and sorcerers and clerics and druids and all of these things. So your players are going to be bringing magic into effect at your game table. And so the setting assumes that you're going to be able to do this kind of magic. The world has magic in it, according to what's listed in the player handbook. If you're curious about what kinds of magic exist within the default Dungeons & Dragons setting, go crack open the player handbook and see what's written inside there. There's a whole section about magic and how there's this magical weave that overlays across the world, and that whenever anybody's casting magical spells, they are plucking at the strands of this weave and bringing cool, powerful magics into effect as a result of it. It's a good read. This is also a good time to talk about another assumption that happens within the typical Dungeons & Dragons fantasy setting, and that is that the player characters are a cut above the rest of normal humanity or the normal population. Commoners in the general population aren't going to be able to cast magic. They're not going to be able to be these crazy, tenacious barbarians or these skilled weaponsmiths or be able to shapeshift or do anything else. You can have characters of NPCs, general characters that your players are not actually playing that can have these powers. That's great. That's a wonderful thing to encourage in your story. But for the most part, the game generally assumes that your players are unusually capable compared to the rest of the environment and the people in that environment. And this is done for a couple of reasons, with the most important reason being that it helps lends weight to your players being the center of the story. It helps give a little more credibility to your characters being the driving agents within the storyline. But it is worth remembering that the general population is not going to have the awesome set of powers that your normal players have. Now, you can run a game that doesn't follow this, but this is the typical setting. So go ahead and send your game invitation to the people that you want to invite to come play with you. Let them know which kind of game you're going to be playing, what rule set you want to do, work through the scheduling details of when you guys want to play, how often you want to play, who's bringing snacks, what kind of drinks you guys are going to have, etc. Go ahead and do all these things. And be sure to ask them to start thinking about what kinds of characters they want to play, because they're going to need it for the first time that you guys meet up. So let's talk about the first meetup that you're going to have with your players. This is what most veteran Dungeon Masters will call their Session 0. And Session 0 basically means that your first play session is going to be different than your normal play sessions and kind of special. You're not going to play the normal game. You're not going to be running through any kind of story or anything else. It's kind of a sync-up round. It's an opportunity to talk to your players about what they want to get out of the game, what you want to get out of the game, what kinds of things you're going to be covering during the game, what kinds of storytelling styles you might want to use, things like this. Now, this may seem a little bit intractable to you as a new dungeon master, and that's fine. As you grow and as you learn how to do this better and get more experience as a dungeon master, you'll come up with your own things that you want to use and do in your Session 0. But let me give you a couple of things that I think you should cover in your first Session 0. First, I think you should cover your table rules. It's a good opportunity to talk about the kinds of things that you want your players to understand about the game that you're going to play. I cover my table rules every single game session. I remind them of the same rules every single time, ad nauseum, until they know them in their sleep. And 2, you should cover character creation. You want your players to all have their characters ready so that the next time you guys are meeting, they're ready to go. They've got characters that are ready to play at your table when your story is ready. And by doing that as a big group, it can definitely be helpful, especially for if you've got a bunch of new players yourself. So first, let's talk about table rules. As an aspiring dungeon master, you're going to accrue your own table rules as you play the game and as you grow and as you gain experience. And that's good. Everybody has a different experience playing the game, and so everybody's going to have slightly different table rules. One of the things that I really like about the GM Tips series with Satine Phoenix is that she interviews every dungeon master that comes on her show for what their house table rules are. And it's always a telling thing. People have different points of views. People focus on different things. People want to remind their players of different things before the beginning of every game session. Because you are brand new to being a dungeon master, I'll give you a couple of rules that you can use to start with. And these are ones that I think are very important to remind players of when you're first getting started. 1. Be kind and be respectful. This goes for players talking to players, this goes for players talking to Dungeon Master, and it goes for Dungeon Master talking to players. Playing a role-playing game is an unusual activity that we don't have any real prior experience doing in our normal adult lives. You don't go to school for role-playing games, you're not taught how to do it by your parents, unless you've got cool parents that are nerds. And you don't really have much of an opportunity in your normal daily life to practice it on your own. And as a result, it takes people different rates, it takes people different lengths of time to learn how they want to play a role-playing game. Give people that time, give people that space, give people that opportunity, that breathing room to learn how they want to play the role-playing game themselves. Be supportive for your friends, be helpful to your friends. And rule number 2, have fun. Seems obvious, I know, but it's a good reminder that there's no winning or losing in Dungeons & Dragons. You're not competing with one another, you're not trying to play each other's characters, you're not trying to prevail over the Dungeon Master isn't trying to prevail over you. It's a good reminder that everybody is here on the same side, wanting to just hang out with their friends, get a little bit weird, tell a funny story, and just have a good time. And yes, I do cover these rules before every single game session. I remind them every time because it helps put them in the right brain space before every game. By priming them of this statement, it helps to wash away some of the tension that they may have from their normal lives and helps them to forget some of their stress and helps them to forget some of their anxiety. And that the whole point that we're meeting up here is to get a little bit weird and to say some funny things and to tell a fun and compelling story and to kind of cut loose for a little while. I have one more part that I like to cover during my rules section, and I call this my story no-fly zone. And this is a more serious topic. This is a something that for my newer players, they're usually surprised when I bring this up. But I do so with the intent of trying to foster a sensitive gaming environment, a gaming environment where people feel respected, where people feel supported, and where people aren't going to accidentally walk into a storyline that talks about something that they don't feel comfortable with. This usually lands on things like adult themes, whether they're sexual interactions or relationships or romance or something like that, or if it's a matter of substance use, whether it's drugs or alcohol or something like this. I ask my players if there are any subjects that they do not want to talk about at the table. And I feel like this is an important thing. Since we're talking about role-playing games here, they are first and foremost games. And so it is easy to mistake a storyline, however well-intended it may be, as being something that's being taken lightly. And you may be playing with friends that you've known for a really long time. You may be playing with family members that you've known for a really long time, but you don't know everybody's history. For all you know, somebody at the table may be particularly sensitive to these kinds of things. They may not want to make light of using some kind of substance, or they may not want to make light of having some kind of weird sexual interaction at the table. They may not be comfortable with that. And it's your responsibility as the table host to see to it that those kinds of things don't get accidentally stumbled into. So I give my players an opportunity. I let them tell me what kinds of things they don't want to cover, what are the no-fly zones from a role-playing and from a narrative perspective. And I always give them the opportunity to also tell me after the session. They can let me know after the fact in private if it's something that they don't want to talk about in front of the rest of the group. That's fine. The whole point of this activity is to help foster the environment where people's sensitivities are being maintained, where people are feeling respected, and where they feel safe. That's the whole point. As the table host, it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody feels safe and comfortable in this role-playing game environment. I have two things that are on my no-fly list, and I make it a point to tell them what these items are when we're getting started, in hopes that it'll help them to feel encouraged to tell me what they don't want to cover either. My first one is torture. It regularly comes up in role-playing games. I think that it has something to do with the fact that you are opposed by conscious creatures in the game, or maybe organizations or groups of people. And so after you win a fight as a part of your group, you want to try to capture one of the enemies and press them for information. We're not going to role-play through the interrogation. I've been in games where they've tried to do that before, and it just doesn't play well. It's not that interesting. So anytime that it's going to come up at my game table, we're just going to gloss over it, and that's fine, right? It's fine. I'll just say that, oh yeah, you push him for information and he tells you this, and we'll just let it be at that. The second item on my no-fly list is a kind of specific one. I don't have any problems with sexual themes coming up in the role-playing game. I don't have a problem with romances. I don't have a problem with character relationships. I don't have a problem with any of these things. Where I do draw the line is with anything that remotely relates to sexual abuse or sexual assault. I, as a person, have a hard time watching that in movies or television shows or books, and so I'm not going to feature it anywhere in my story. I don't think that it should be anywhere in a role-playing game story. And by telling my players that, not only am I making it abundantly clear that there are things that I will be sensitive to in storytelling, but it also makes it very clear that there are things that I want them to be careful of anything that they may think of. Now, it's not that I think that anybody's ever going to try to do something like that in the game, but it gets them thinking in the right avenue of, I need to be respectful to the fellow players and to the dungeon master. And honestly, it's an important thing to be doing. It's an important thing that everyone individually toes the line for making sure that the environment that you are playing in stays respectful and stays a safe and agreeable, enjoyable space for everybody. You never know what people are sensitive to, and so it's better to take a moment now to address topics that people might be sensitive to or they don't want to cover, to avoid potentially offending somebody later on. And like I said, as you grow and develop as a dungeon master and learn more things and have more levels of experience, you'll find your own things that you like to bring up as table rules and stuff that you like to remind your players of, and I really heavily encourage you to do so. It's one of the easiest ways for you to foster a healthy and safe environment with your players and to ultimately create the game that you would like to create with them. So after you've talked to your players about the table rules that you have, move on to character creation. Your objective by the end of your session 0 should be that all of your players have character sheets created and they've got their characters ready to play for the next time that you guys meet up and you're actually going to begin playing the game. As I mentioned before, it can be useful for new players to do this step together, for character creation to be done as a group so that people can figure it out and help each other as they all figure out what they're supposed to be doing for making characters. Now, as the Dungeon Master, your job during this step is to help your players make characters according to the rule set, and to help them fit whatever character story ideas they have into the overarching story campaign and the game setting that you have in mind that you're going to be playing within. Now, as a new Dungeon Master, you might find that you've got some players that are experienced and might ask you some kind of off-the-wall questions about things that they might like to make as a character. They might want to do a custom race or a custom class or have a weird background or something along these lines. And it's a really easy thing to respond to. All you have to tell them is to just please keep to the player handbook. You're a new Dungeon Master. You've got to get your feet under you by playing what's already written down. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to write custom stuff and to do weird things and to complicate things and to do unique things later over the course of your life as a Dungeon Master. But for now, I highly recommend keeping to just what's in the player handbook. I promise that the story that you're going to be telling is going to be fantastical enough as it is. You don't need to make custom stuff for your first go through. Now, before your players come over, there are some materials that you're probably going to want to have on hand for when they get there. You're going to need to have players' handbooks available, either one or more. You can share one if you've only got access to one. It'll slow you down a little bit, but it won't be too bad all in all. You're probably going to want to have some polyhedral dice available, so you should probably go out and buy some polyhedral dice yourself before your players show up. You're going to be using them to roll stats as well as rolling hit points and things like this. Again, you could share one, but it'll slow things down, so it's nice to have multiples. You're also going to want to print out character sheets for your players to use. Now, I recommend doing at least 2 per player so that way if people are going to screw something up, you've got extra copies on hand that you can use for them. The other benefit to doing the extra copies is that if you're using the 3-page character sheet that comes from Wizards of the Coast off of their website, the last sheet that's on here is the spellcasting sheet. If you've got extras, I like to take extras of these and convert them into the beginnings of an inventory sheet for people. I just scratch off the word cantrips that's written up there at the top and I replace it with the word backpack and give it to them. And since it's a nice line gridded thing with a bunch of little individual section demarcations, it's actually pretty useful for beginning to track inventory for your players. So this is kind of a nice little side bonus of using multiple copies of these character sheets for your players. The last thing that I suggest is using the character creation aids that I created and that I linked to in a couple of my other videos. I'll put the link down below again so you can download these and print copies yourself. But I really like using these character creation aids in most of the games that I've been playing recently where I'm getting new players started up. They seem to appreciate having these flashcards on hand and being able to thumb through them and see some of the different pictures that show up and see some of the paraphrasing for the different characters that are available, the races, the classes, the backgrounds, all of that. You can definitely go and download these from the link that I'll provide. Again, these things are you can just print these out. You can paste them on a 4x6 index card if you want to. I printed them out and then laminated them because I'm a geek that way. But my players really like using these things. They found it really helpful in our most recent character creation session that we did ourselves. I like to divide up the classes in the same way that I do them for the how to make a character in D&D video, where I take the strength-based classes and put them in a pile. I take the dexterity-based classes and put them in a pile and put the magic classes in another pile, just to help keep it easy and help keep it consistent for the new players as they're trying to sort out what's what in terms of making a new character. Now, like I said before, your objective by the end of your session 0 is to make it so that all of your players have characters ready, character sheets filled out, and have a character idea of who they'd like to play for when you guys meet up again, when you're ready for playing your first game session. Each player is going to have to select a race, they're going to have to select a class, they're going to have to pick a background from within the player handbook, they're going to have to come up with some kind of backstory that helps explain why their character is out adventuring. It doesn't need to be particularly long. You can do it in 2 sentences, you can do it in 10 pages if your players are interested in giving you that much backstory. But all that it needs to do is answer the question, why is their character out adventuring, as opposed to being safe at home, eating food, and slowly growing old? So long as you can answer that question, that's all you really need. That's sufficient for a background. You can figure out the rest at the gaming table as you're playing through your first couple of levels. Your players should also spend a little bit of time thinking about the appearance for their characters. This doesn't have to be particularly detailed. It doesn't have to. Just you got to think a little bit about, especially if your players are non-human, you want to think about the different kinds of physical characteristics that the characters are going to have. It's going to help you from a role-playing perspective. Once your players have settled on most of these details, they need to write up a character sheet, put these details down on paper so that you can finalize them. Now, I'm not going to cover the process of completing a character character sheet. If I was going to do so, it would add an extra half an hour to this video, and this video is already long enough as it is. But there's a lot of other really great resources that already exist out there, especially on YouTube, for giving you, the Dungeon Master, a walkthrough of how to complete a Dungeons & Dragons character sheet. This one right here is a particularly great one. This one is done by a YouTuber named ProJared. He did a tutorial sequence on completing a character sheet, as well as a couple of other things for tutorials for Dungeons & Dragons. Give that one a look through, especially you, the Dungeon Master. Part of your role is going to be helping people to make sense of this process, so it's important for you to understand how this goes. Once all of your players have character sheets, the last thing that they need to do in terms of getting ready to play the game is to familiarize themselves with the kind of powers and abilities and weapons that they're going to be using to play that character. If they're a magic caster, they might have to make some spell selections, which means spending a little bit of time reading up their spell lists and maybe picking some of them. If that part is a little bit confusing for your players, feel free to send them over to my video that I made about how to magic in Dungeons & Dragons. I try to approach it from a brand new player's perspective and try to cover some of the topics that might seem a little bit confusing or a little bit strange. And it's a good walkthrough for getting people started picking out their magic spells that they're going to use for their own characters. Once all of your players have completed character sheets and they've got some story-related idea of who their characters are that they're going to be playing as, you're done. Congratulations, you made it to the end of session 0. Your players are ready to go home and think about their characters, get ready to play their characters for the next time that you invite them back to begin with session 1. You made it. Now, when you send them home, I recommend sending them home with a couple of homework assignments. And the first homework assignment is it's really more of an RPG rite of passage than anything else. And that is they need to go buy their own set of polyhedral dice. Yes, you could have them share dice at the table, but it's going to slow things down a lot, and I really don't recommend it. Plus, dice are cheap, and they come in cool colors and designs anyway, so people are going to want to pick their own customized set to begin with. They also need to pick up a miniature that they want to use to represent their character whenever you're doing a grid-based battle system. It should be something that vaguely resembles their character. You can do your best based on what's available, but it should be something that's distinctive enough that they can identify who they are on the battlefield. They get bonus points if they want to paint it too. Now, it might be good to schedule a group trip so that you and your players can all go to your local gaming store and pick out your dice and your miniatures together, or you can just send out a link to your players for an online store that you all can buy it from. We do sell dice and miniatures ourselves at the Titan Bear Gaming store. You can find that at titanbeargaming.com. We've got a ton of dice. We really like dice ourselves. I own far too many. And we've got a ton of miniatures. We have a lot of really cool miniatures lines. One that I highly recommend looking at, because you get a really good set of miniatures for the price point, is the new WizKids Nolzur's Marvelous Unpainted Minis line, or their Pathfinder Deep Cuts line. You can find them on the website if you go look at our miniatures section. These things are really nice. They're really highly detailed minis. They have a good range of the different kinds of heroes that you might be looking to play with them. And they come pre-primed in case you want to be painting them yourself. They come primed with Vallejo paints. It's actually really nice. I like those a lot. I own too many myself, and I'm buying each one as it comes out. But once your players have a filled out character sheet, they've got their dice and they've got their miniature ready to go, they're done. They're all set. Their characters are ready. They're ready to play. They're just waiting on you to get the game ready for the first gaming session. That's what we're going to be covering in the next video. Dungeon Mastery 103 is going to be on DM preparation. What all do you need to do to get ready to host your first game session? I think it's going to be about a week before that video goes out. We're getting into the holiday season here in the States, and so I'm going to take a couple of days off from filming. While you're waiting for that, feel free to head back to the Dungeon Mastery 101, Spirit of Dungeon Mastery, and get caught up on that video, or poke around the rest of the channel and see what other videos we've got. I've done some other good stuff from the players' points of view on the DM's Club, as well as some of our general videos that we have here at Titan Bear Gaming. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can see when new videos are coming out. I try to release multiple videos per week, so we're always putting up something new. You don't want to miss it. You can also come talk to us on social media. We're on pretty much every kind of social media at Titan Bear Gaming, and we're pretty active. Come by, chat us up. We'd like to talk to you. I hope to see you there. Until next time, have more fun, would you? It's good for you.